In this episode of the Orange Nerd Show, it's an all spoilers review and discussion of the new Chippendale Rescue Rangers on Disney Plus. This is going to be nuts. Welcome aboard to another episode of the Orange Nerd Show, where we talk about everything except the theme parks, although we might dip a little bit into the theme parks today because it is kind of relevant to today's topic. But we're going to talk all Rescue Rangers. This movie was fascinating to me, absolutely fascinating. I haven't been able to stop talking about it since I watched it on Friday. But before we dive into all the goodies, let's introduce my fantastic panel. Over here to my left is Mr. Family Man 23. Mr. Family Man, if you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You can find me on my YouTube channel, Disney Family Man 23. You can interact with me on Twitter at Disney George. And of course, you'll find me here on Orange Grove 55's channel with Citrus Corner with all the fresh but yet sticky Disney news and info coming from Walt Disney World.
Yes, absolutely. And down below, joining us again, Ethan, Mr. Theme Park Wizard. Welcome back, Ethan. If you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
You can find me at theme_wizard on Twitter, theme_park_wizard on Instagram, themestorewizard.com to buy some of my cool stuff. And then Theme Park Wizard on YouTube, and a special shout out to Vash Guy for teaching me how to use this microphone after a whole year of having it. Woo!
Yes.
Always of service, sir. Thank you very much for coming on.
Yes. And as always, producer Dre, our tech guru and host of Freshly Squeezed. Welcome back, brother.
It's happy to be back. You know, we were talking about this movie for a while. You know, talking about it and saying how we should watch it and stuff like that. And it was a rare time where we all got to watch it. And I'm super excited to actually get into it. So if you want to find me, well, you can do that right down below at Vash Scott, best place to interact with me. And if you want to see me, well, it's on the channel you're watching right now, Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info. Squeeze fresh, right from the Grove.
Pay attention, it's Joe time.
There you go.
Yes. All right, let's dive right in. Let's talk about this movie. This movie shocked the hell out of me. I gotta be completely honest with you guys. I'm gonna start with you, George. Before we kind of dive into the nitty gritty, I want to kind of go around the panel and kind of get just overall thoughts about the movie. So, when you watched this thing? What were your overall thoughts, feelings? Takeaways.
Well, the first thing that kind of intrigued me was the movie poster, so to speak, with the tagline, "This isn't a reboot, it's a comeback." And that's what kind of drew me to take an interest in it. Because a lot of times when they make these reboots, it's a hit or miss, So the fact that they said this is not a reboot, it's a comeback, I was kind of thinking, okay, we'll see where this is going. And my overall thoughts on it is pretty much I loved what they did with this. I mean, it was something that, you kind of crave a little bit, especially after watching like Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It gave me a lot of those vibes, which is one of the greatest cinematic films of all time, in my expertise as well, But so it kind of gave me a little bit of those vibes, but I loved how the storyline of how they kind of paid an homage to this TV show that we all grew up on Disney Afternoon. And it speaks to a higher generation where a lot of people may not have known about the Disney Afternoon with Chippendale Rescue Rangers, Darkwing Duck, DuckTales, Tailspin, etc. And now it will kind of bring a new light to say, hey, this is something that has existed and it's still out there. And I love how they incorporate that in the movies where they kind of I know we'll get into the details, but as far as like where they talk about certain specific episodes of the Rescue Rangers and so it's like you take the real life reality and you take this iconic show, and you kind of blend it all together. But my overall thoughts on it, I thought it was a very breath of fresh air type of film. I do have some issues with it, which we'll get into that as well. But overall, I thought it was a very, very decent movie, decently made.
Cool. Mr. Theme Park Wizard, overall thoughts, general thoughts on this film.
Well, for those of you who don't know that I'm watching, I'm 26 years old. So, I have not seen The Rescue Rangers. But I know, shocker, right? But I still love the little guys. But I really like the hybrid live action and animations movies like Roger Rabbit. This is why I for sure was gonna watch it, and I did. I loved it. And then I also like John Mulaney I first noticed him on the TV show Big Mouth on Netflix, and it's really funny. I'll say it again later, but because if you watch Big Mouth, all you want to hear is Andrew talking, not Chip, because he sounds exactly the same. But I loved it, but really surprised me was all those cameos of different people that popped up. I was like, wow, and then the little digs at other studios with like Ugly Sonic. I thought that was hilarious. So I thought it was a great film, and I'll probably be watching it a couple more times because even the voice cast, which is incredible.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Mr. Vash Sky, overall thoughts on Rescue Rangers? Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute, sir.
Sorry about that. I do apologize. Didn't want to interrupt the flow with my incessant mouth noises. No, I actually really enjoyed it a lot. I enjoyed the screenwriting. I thought the jokes were pretty good, especially for the kind of almost campy but kind of self-referential tone that they were going for. I thought it was actually done really well. OG, you said, as we were prepping for the show, and not just before the show today, but actually the post-show of our show that we did yesterday, you expressed how, maybe meta is, maybe we're not a fan of it, and I would agree with you there, but I thought this was done really well, kind of in that vein. But Theme Park Wizard, I agree with you. It's almost like you had to watch this show twice, right? Yep. Once for the story, second for the cameos and references and so forth that come with this. And it was not an easy feat. In fact, it was funny. We have a mutual friend between all of us, and friend of the channel, friend of the show. I won't reveal who that is, but they came back to us and said, wow, I got to give the lawyers credit. And apparently that was given because Akifa Schaffer, the film's director, actually during the premiere went up on stage and thanked the list of lawyers that worked, on behalf of this film, getting the rights to all these different characters across all these different studios. He thanked them all because it was really a feat. Think about it. Unlike Roger Rabbit, you didn't have a Steven Spielberg in your pocket making all those negotiations and stuff to actually get you those, rights. And you could tell. Some of those characters were, you have your A list, your B list, and your C list, right? These were kind of D and E's, right? A lot of them, but I thought they were integrated really well done. And the movie kind of makes fun of that, right? That these aren't the most popular characters and so forth. And I thought the commentary that they were making, I thought it was all kind of done quite well. There were some problems, right? It wasn't perfect, and even Akiva even says it himself. It's like, yeah, we really wanted to do, real traditional hand-drawn animation, but we just didn't have the budget, right? I think this was done for like, a quarter or a fraction of what a big production would be from coming out of Disney Animation or Pixar, right? So I think they utilized those resources quite well, and made for a good production.
100%. And yeah, to kind of touch upon what you just mentioned, Vash, I am not a big fan of meta at all. I don't like the Shrek franchise. I don't like the Shrek franchise. I don't like Enchanted. I don't even really like Wreck-It Ralph, to be completely honest with you. But one meta movie I absolutely love. Not only do I love it, I think it's probably a cinematic masterpiece. The gold standard is Who Framed Roger Rabbit. Now, love that movie. But again, it was Steven Spielberg, and Steven Spielberg can make a movie about a paper bag, and it will be a masterpiece. This guy is a genius. I just watched West Side Story, which was like his first musical ever, and he like hit like a home run and actually surpassed the original. I mean, the dude is brilliant. So
well, don't forget too, that was Roger Rabbit was directed by Robert Zemeckis as well, which is also an experienced filmmaker and all those kind of things. So the team involved really made that film.
Oh, totally. So that was the one exception for me in terms of the meta movies. But I gotta say, and this is a huge compliment to Rescue Rangers, I like this movie very much. This is number 2 for me. This is absolutely number 2 for me. I thought it was really, really brilliant how they kind of approached this, because you kind of have, and we'll kind of dive into a little more detail now, but you have the show where they're like these, you know, 2 gumshoes, right? 2 detectives, and they try to solve all these cases. And that was really clever in the movie. That was just a role. They were actors, right? But the cool thing about the movie is that they were kind of drawn in and kind of forced to kind of be the characters they were in the show. And I thought that was really, really clever. You know, I thought that was really, really cool. Hey, we're not detectives, but we're kind of sucked into this crime, this kidnap mystery with Monterey Jack. And now they have to actually be those detectives that they were in the show. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. And I love what they did with the voices. I didn't think I would, but they kind of explain it where the voices you hear on the show are them in character. That's a voice. Like a lot of times you see it in real life. You know, these Hollywood actors and actresses have like really strong British accents, and they'll have a full-blown American accent for like an FBI show or something, right? And that's what Chip and Dale were doing. They were doing the chipmunk voices for their role, but these are their real voices in the movie. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. George, what did you think about, kind of diving into a little more detail, the voice, the way they handled the voices? Did you like that? It bothers some people. Where did you stand on that one?
I was a bit hesitant on that part because I was the same way with the reboot for DuckTales. I didn't really know exactly how I was going to like it, which by the way, I did enjoy the DuckTales reboot. But with Chip and Dale, you know, these are 2, you know, iconic characters that, you know, I grew up with the original like Fab Five with, you know, Mickey, Minnie, Donald, Pluto. So I'm so used to them having, you know, those chipmunk voices. And I thought, well, how is this going to end up where they have like these kind of, you know, normal, regular voices, but of how they incorporated that in the storyline, I thought was actually genius. Just as you had mentioned, OG, where it's like they are portraying these characters. So as we watch the actual show of Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, that is them as being actors. They're performing those roles. So it's like, well, behind the scenes, this is what we sound like. This is our normal day-to-day life. And I love how they incorporate that aspect as well. It kind of shows a different side to the Chipmunks that we're just so used to them being kind of this wacky, zany duo, you know, that are, you know, but in the movie side, it kind of shows you the behind the scenes of how they live in their real life, you know, in their house. And Chip has a dog, and, you know, he works, you know, after being, you know, an actor where the show ended, you know, he works on like insurance policies and all that stuff. Like, I like how they incorporated that where, you know, you're taking real life situations, but you're incorporating the cartoon animation aspect of it. And that's exactly what they did with Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And that's what drew me to the, like, from the back, when you see Chip and Dale as young chipmunks in the school, you kind of already see that blend of live action and animation. It's like that first scene, like it had my attention to say, okay, I'm interested. I want to watch this all the way through.
Yeah. Now, Ethan, Mr. Theme Park Wizard, the voices, because that was a big part of this. That was kind of jarring, kind of in the trailers. Did those bother you? Did you like the way they kind of explained that?
I did. I love the voices because, again, like what you guys said, because they're actors and the actors change different voices. But also, again, personal opinion, I just love John Mulaney, and I love the show Big Mouth. So as long as he is talking his own Andrew voice, which is his regular voice, I was digging it. And then Andy Samberg too, he did a pretty good job, I have to say. I'm gonna give the edge to John Mulaney because, you know, big fan. But yeah, I really like what they did with the voices, and again, the rest of the voice cast too are pretty cool.
Yeah, and I lost it. I fell out of my chair when I saw Little Zipper. have that deep baritone voice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was Dennis Haysbert, which, if you don't know, he's the guy that's, the Allstate, "Are you in good hands?" kind of guy, and he's got the, I could tell too, they added a little bit of depth to that voice, a little bit of bass, just to kind of make the point, like, oh, it's this little character, but he's got this big old voice, I thought that was kind of clever, that kind of, that kind of playing on these voices and these kind of, what you might expect and give you the unexpected kind of thing. I thought it was really enjoyable. It was a little weird because, you have some of the other characters and they have retained their voices, Gadget being one of them and so forth, but then Chip and Dale, they have these kind of altered voices for their roles. It was like, oh, that's kind of strange. You'd think that would be consistent across the board, but I guess it only works with these two. Obviously I think they won those performances from those characters and those voices, right, driving the whole film, and doing the chipmunk thing during the whole time might get a little grating, right? Yeah. So it allowed for those voices to shine. I think that was well done. Overall, pretty good, pretty solid.
Yeah, and of course, if they really wanted to keep that chipmunk voice, they had everything right there, because the actress who does the voice of Gadget, Tress MacNeille, actually also provided the voice of Chip in the Rescue Rangers show.
Oh, okay. All right.
And
well, there
fun
you go.
Fact, until this movie, I didn't know Gadget was a girl. I always thought it was a robot because of the ride. It looked like a robot to me. So I thought Gadget was a robot. So when they started calling her Gadget and she was, I'm like, oh, it's that little girl right there? Interesting.
Right. And it gives an explanation too. They make a joke of it, like, oh, my character in the show was consistent with my character in real life. How about that? And it's kind of funny, right? But she's kind of like this, like MacGyver almost, right? And you can see the heavy inspiration from that show going on to Chip and Dale's Rescue Rangers. But now the Gadgets Go coaster, which I think we'll talk about a little bit later, kind of makes sense, right? It's kind of hodgepodge of all these kind of things that she's finding and making use out of. Very, very cool.
Now, one thing I loved about this movie is that they didn't try to pan, like, they understood the audience. And what I mean by that is like, anyone who kind of grew up with Rescue Rangers when it was like actually on TV, like, I'm not even talking reruns. Like, if you grew up when it was on TV, right? You're older now. You're in your 40s, right? And it's kind of, I like how the filmmakers in this, like, for this movie, they understood that. And this movie definitely does have a much more adult kind of angle to it. I mean, the whole storyline of, like, it was hilarious to me. Like, Monterey Jack, he's in too deep with these, like, cheese dealers,
Yes.
He can't handle that. It was hilarious, and it was like watching one of these, like, I don't know, like, it was like watching, like, Sopranos or something, right? But in, like, this Rescue Ranger world, and they did it with, like, such a straight face. It wasn't corny. It didn't come off forced. It was really well done. Yeah. And I like that adult angle. And it reminded me a lot, again, of Roger Rabbit. Roger Rabbit was a very adult movie. Mm-hmm. And I think this one is too. I don't think necessarily either of these films are necessarily made for kids. I think they're much more geared towards the adults. There's a lot of adult humor in this one,
which is, it's very interesting how they would release this under the Disney kind of brand. Even Michael Eisner, when we're looking at Roger Rabbit, it's like, maybe Touchdown, that's gonna take the lead on this, but we're gonna have a Roger Rabbit attraction in Disneyland. Very, very funny. But I think with this, I think the humor, yes, I will say all the jokes, references, and the humor associated with it, this is definitely geared towards fans of the Disney Afternoon who were old enough to see it back in the day. But anybody younger than that, I mean, now you start getting into the questionable territory for sure. Theme Park Wizard, you just come in. You just come in at the bottom line there. No. I mean, anybody over, I would say, maybe 13, 14, this might be appropriate for. But I do agree with you, OG. I thought the references to kind of real life. By the way, the commentary on the bootlegging, like, that was.
Oh yeah.
Wow, I would have never guessed. I would have never thought that Disney make reference to that industry, that what happens overseas, all that kind of stuff. But they lay it all there on the line. Props to Disney for approving that one. That's for sure.
No, yeah, definitely. It was really a lot of this stuff in this movie really surprised me, and I loved how because even Who Framed Roger Rabbit really stuck to just tunes.
Mhm.
The cool thing about Rescue Rangers is that it incorporated all kinds of animation. We saw claymation, we saw Muppets,
Yeah.
I even saw a hand puppet.
Yeah, I saw a
the
hand
sock
puppet.
puppets,
Yeah,
Claymation, you had Uncanny Valley, which made a lot of references to early CG, actual CG, or modern CG, I should say. Anime was also incorporated in this. I mean, it was a love letter animation, and I thought that was really cool.
well, and it was cool too how the whole over and over and over again, the filmmakers found brilliant ways to explain things.
Sure.
Dale goes in for the CGI surgery to help his career. That's
Right.
brilliant, I think. And then Baloo got the CGI surgery and then landed the big gig on live action Jungle Book.
Right.
It was all just so brilliantly done. That's just such a brilliant kind of backstory to this stuff. And I love that. That was hilarious to me.
They took it in a direction where you never really thought they were going to.
No.
It was like you kind of had that sense of, okay, it's going to be that typical type of, okay, Disney kind of cotton candy-ish type of storyline. But no, it's like they went a lot to incorporate adult theme, not even just moments, but even characters. And I brought it up to you fellas last night, but where they had Butthead from Beavis and Butthead on the back of the bench, and then you had Randy Marsh.
Dobby.
Randy Marsh from South Park, South Park of all shows, that he was in the sauna. It was and I had to rewind it. I had to rewind it back to make sure I was wait, that's exactly who I saw, right? This is a Disney movie, right? And it's but I love how they push the boundaries where it's they didn't make it full on adult, but they incorporated adult characters or situations, because whether you like adult animation or you don't, but it's all in one genre. So to kind of keep it in that world, might as well add little subtleties to it.
Yeah. Now, Ethan, did you like that adult aspect to it? You thought that was pretty fun?
Oh, I loved it. I loved all the little characters. I like the Simpsons in there, the little bootleg Simpsons at the end. That was hilarious. And then ugly Sonic, because he was so ugly and the internet hated that. And then the fact that he was in it for so much of the movie was hilarious.
And they actually mentioned everything that fans could not stand about that.
Yeah, zoomed in on his teeth and went all slow motion
which is wild, and that really took off. I mean, I guess what is it? Ugly Sonic was trending on Twitter the same day that this was released. I mean, everybody kind of took to that in a big way. I can't to be in the room with the executives and the people associated with Sonic who had just survived that whole ordeal, got out of it relatively unscathed, made a very successful first film there. Having these guys come up to him and say, "Hey, we'd like to use this," that's got to be a trip right there. But it was used effectively. It was used well. When you're on Main Street, I loved it because Dale's kind of walking ship through and going, "Oh, you don't want to mess with these people." This guy's doing this script, and you're all kind of like, "What is going on here?" But you go up to the cheese dealer, and obviously, they take him in the back room, and he changes his kind of tone completely. In one of those, he says, he calls out a little girl, says, "Yeah, you know what they're doing? Muppet fights." And then in the in the credits, in the end roll, you see a clip of those Muppet fights taking place, and she's counting the cash and stuff like that. So Dale was correct. I mean, it was all. I thought the humor and everything, all the jokes, were just really well done. And I got to give props to Disney for taking those risks. I mean, when you talk about, hey, we want to incorporate ugly Sonic and all this kind of stuff, that's got to be to explain that one. It's got to be an interesting process, but they pulled it off well.
They did. And actually, one of my big concerns, whenever anyone mentions right now, a Roger Rabbit sequel, one of my big concerns with that idea is we live in a very politically correct environment right now. A movie like Roger Rabbit, I always felt like that you could never do that right now. It's just too risque. Well, I don't know. Rescue Rangers gives me hope. I mean, Rescue Rangers was pretty risque, and it kind of gives me that glimmer of hope, you know? I mean, it's encouraging. I'm like, wow, they like George says, balls to the wall, you know, balls to the wall. Here, hold on. Let me drop
Balls
it.
to the wall.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
But they really did. They didn't shy away from being edgy, risque, and I'm actually like you, Vash. I'm very surprised by that. That was kind of encouraging. It was not like a sugar-coated thing at all.
Oh, absolutely. You know, I mean, the only thing that maybe Roger Rabbit featured that this didn't was more of the suggestive elements, right? I think you know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh,
Even
yeah.
Gadget was a little bit toned down from, you know, how she looked in the original animation, right?
But
They make
remember
reference to
what
Jessica Rabbit, but we don't actually see her, you know, that kind of stuff.
But just remember with Jessica Rabbit, she's not bad. She's just drawn that way.
She's just drawn that way, right? You know, and I love how they're all tied up, and it's like, oh yeah, great. You know, you have us in this, you know, this backstage club here. Oh, is Jessica Rabbit gonna be here? You know, and I thought that was really, really clever. You don't, you know, you hear reference, but you don't actually see her. You know, I think this movie could have easily have incorporated that. It would have been fine, but you know, common sensibilities today, unfortunate.
Yeah. Now I have a question for you guys, and this was kind of going through my mind when I was watching this. A big part of the beginning of the film was Chip and Dale's relationship, and then Dale kind of does Chip dirty. He goes out. He gets his own spin-off show, right?
Double O Dale.
Double O Dale. And George, I'm going to start with you on this one. There's no way we'll know unless they say it one day. But, you know, whenever they're making these movies or these shows, they go through a lot of various concepts. Like, I'm sure the Disney Afternoon, there were dozens, maybe even hundreds of concepts and ideas they had for various shows that never saw the light of day, right? It seems like the filmmakers in this movie did their homework, because even the episodes that they reference are actual episodes. I checked.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Do you think, George, and I'll go to you, Vash, and I'll go to you, Ethan, after George. But do you think, George, that Double O Dale was a concept that they were actually considering for the Disney Afternoon at one time, and it just never got made, like a Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers spinoff?
I personally, and it's funny that you actually asked that, because that did run through my head when I was watching the film, especially after watching the whole entire film, where they were, they were kind of paying homage to the show itself. And they may not have mentioned it right now, but I think somewhere down the line that has some relevance to what the Rescue Rangers were all about. Maybe it could have been an episode of, if they were to do season 4, it might have been something that maybe was a title for the first episode of season 4, where they thought they were going to have a season 4 and it stopped at season 3. True. It could have been a spinoff, as you had mentioned, from Rescue Rangers, where kind of Dale kind of has like the spotlight, and he kind of has like that 007 James Bond type of feel. Because if you actually watch Rescue Rangers, the way Chip is dressed, he's dressed like Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
And Dale is dressed like
Magnum PI.
Tom
Selleck and Magnum PI.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So it's like they already had that kind of way about going with the character. So I personally feel like that could have been something that was in the pipeline when Rescue Rangers was going on, but I think it never came to fruition, and it just kind of sat on the shelf and no one really knew about it. So I think, along with talking about each individual episode, I think that there could have been something there. As I said, either like a spinoff from Rescue Rangers, or it could have possibly been an episode for a future season that never got made.
What do you think, Mr. Wizard? Is it possible this was actually a real show that never saw the light of day?
Well, I started to do a little type in, and I see there's an episode here called Double O Chipmunk that did air. I don't know if it was a reference to that, but that's an interesting thing. But I think it might be it could have been a spinoff that didn't air, because they did say the pilot was canceled. So maybe in real life the pilot was canceled, or just didn't air. But whether or not, it sounds really cool. So I'd like to see it in a future year. a brand new 00 Dale. That'd be really cool because 007, I love 007 as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
could be off 00 Chipmunk here.
Vash, what do you think? Double O Dale. I mean, do you think that was a deep cut?
Yeah, I think it might have been a deep cut, and Double O Chipmunk. I had to take a look at that, but perhaps this was a concept that they had, maybe the original series had actually kind of written up as part of either an episode or maybe an episode that goes off into like a spin-off type concept, and Double O Dale, maybe that did actually exist at one point in story sessions and so forth, going back to that show, and maybe they wanted to kind of do a wink and a nod towards those concepts that maybe didn't see the light of day and weren't given the screen time that maybe they should have been, and I could definitely see that for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, look, it's no secret. Chip in the original Rescue Rangers was made to look like, Harrison Ford's character in Indiana Jones, right? And Dale, obviously, as we spoke, Tom Selleck's character in Magnum PI. So, which, by the way, both those two were looked at to play the role of Indiana Jones. Obviously, Harrison Ford won out. So, I think it's very. I think there is a chance that the James Bond element and stuff like that, this kind of circular referencing, because Indiana Jones obviously is based off of James Bond. I think what you had here with this crew that worked on this film, they were fans of the source material and were looking for those deep cuts. You could definitely tell. So possibly.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. Now let's dive into what we didn't like about the movie. Let's dive into what we didn't like, because
Right.
For the most part, I liked this movie a lot, but there were some things I didn't care for. George, I'll start with you. What was something or some things you didn't care about in terms of the film?
Well, one of my major, I guess you could say somewhat of disappointments.
Mhm.
And I think it was more so not of why they did it, but it was just the execution and the approach that they took with this. Was with the villain in the film. And in the very beginning, when they mentioned Pete, in my mind, I'm thinking of Pete from, like no one ever is thinking anyone else, because Pete is always the go-to person to be the villain.
Pete from Goof Troop.
From Goof Troop. And I was very surprised that when the Chipmunks actually got to meet Pete, it wasn't Pete that I thought it was going to be. It was Pete as Peter Pan.
Yeah.
But it was a much older Peter Pan as he grew up and, in the industry, after being a certain age and what have you. And I can somewhat understand where they were trying to get at with it, because it's like after so long, you lose touch base in the industry. When you're a certain bracket of an age, that's when you're like the golden child, the golden star. And then after so long, it's like they don't need you anymore. So they cast you off. So it fits in like with the quote unquote of the bootlegging with the animation. However, when you have a character like Peter Pan and the history with the Disney company of the actor Bobby Driscoll, who was Peter Pan back in 1953, there was a lot of issues afterwards, like his career growing up, that he worked for Disney as a young child actor with Song of the South, So Dear to My Heart, Treasure Island, and then essentially becoming Peter Pan. And that was his last big role with the company. And there was a time where he was going onto the studio lot, and without even any notification, he was let go. He was fired. He was not allowed back on the lot. And he just kind of took like a downward spiral to eventually to his untimely death, unfortunately. But it's more so, I think it was the execution because of the character that was representing this, that it just kind of gave me a bitter taste about it. And it's just because I'm just I don't like to put myself on a pedestal, but like a Disney connoisseur with Disney history. So for someone just coming in and watching this, they'd be like, oh, okay, I get it, Peter. But there's a deeper connection to this character of what they were trying to represent in this film.
Yeah, Bobby Driscoll had a really rough life after Peter Pan, and from what I understand, he suffered from substance abuse and all kinds of stuff, and he did pass away very young. That was my chief complaint as well with the film. It was just a little too kind of on the nose. It didn't feel right, and like George said, the vast majority of people are not going to pick that up. Most people don't even know who Bobby Driscoll is. Fine, but I just felt like it was a little bit in bad taste to kind of go that route with this particular character, knowing that the voice actor had those problems after his role as Peter Pan. I thought that was in bad taste. I think definitely out of everything that, in this film, that was the one thing that really bothered me the most. Mr. Vashkai, what did you not like about Rescue Rangers?
Yeah, the Bobby Driscoll thing, that was definitely tough, because I think the filmmakers were trying to provide some commentary on that, some actually insightful commentary on how, Hollywood can be, not the best when casting aside, child actors, child stars, right? And I believe in the case of Bobby Driscoll himself, it was a severe case of acne that, was ultimately agreed upon by everybody why he was let go from Disney ultimately. And they actually used that in the film. Like it's obviously it's Peter Pan's character, but they make reference to it, and I thought they were maybe going in a direction that was maybe insightful and thoughtful, but in the end, they make him out to be kind of this, kind of clumsy, run-of-the-mill villain caricature almost, and all that kind of insightful commentary is kind of lost there because of how of the direction that they went with the character ultimately, which I thought was a really missed opportunity and was done kind of in poor taste ultimately. Yeah. The execution wasn't quite done maybe in the way that maybe it deserved to be. So that was kind of unfortunate. That was one thing that really kind of let me down, and that other things too, you could definitely tell that the budget kind of affected some of the decision making. I would have liked to have seen traditional hand-drawn animation, or an animation style that's maybe not as low frame rate as we ultimately got, right? Maybe a little bit more dimensional on some of the characters to kind of maybe match what Roger Rabbit was attempting to evoke with its art direction and character stylings and so forth. Obviously, Roger Rabbit was one of the most expensive productions at the time, so this didn't necessarily have the luxury. But look, I think the Bobby Driscoll thing is definitely number one. And there was a few things that are maybe nitpicky, but I think overall, that this film, it definitely had some strengths that supersede some of its flaws and drawbacks.
Yeah, 100%. Mr. Wizard, some things you didn't like about the movie.
Wow. Well, after I hear about this Bobby thing, that's pretty effed up. But
Yeah.
let's see. It's funny. Some of the things I didn't like were part of some of the things I liked. Like, for example, the CGI thing, and one CGI and one's hand-drawn. That was cool, like the way they explained it. But then at the same time, I felt it was distracting. Like, I felt like they were both CGI or both hand-drawn animation would have been like. Actually, I prefer them both non-CG, non-3D. But I liked it, but I was like, I didn't like it at the same time because I found myself getting distracted. And then also the cameos, which I love the cameos, but at the same time, I think sometimes I got so distracted by the cameos, I almost forgot what was happening, like with the actual story. And then that's why I said I probably have to watch it again. Like, I understand what the overall thing was, but I think little specific things, especially lines they say, I was like, oh, wait, but look, there's someone over there. Oh, I missed what Dale said, So a little distracting there. And then a little tiny nitpicky thing. There was a time where, when it was Captain Putty, who I love J.K. Simmons, but he was holding up his little tiny gun at Ellie, and then she put her hands. I'm like, are you kidding me? You stomped that little boy and kicked the gun out of his hand. There's no way that should happen. But yeah, that's really much it.
Okay. Yeah. No. Ethan, you bring up a really good point, though. I think with the distraction factor, especially with the CGI Dale and the 2D Chip, It was a clever concept. It was, but it was slightly distracting. I can definitely see where you're coming from with that. It was kind of jarring to see the two different styles together like that.
Because especially because there's like together like all the films, so it's not like just like one or two scenes, but it's like the whole hour and a half. You're just looking at two very different styles like the whole time. It's like whoa.
Yeah.
Right. It's interesting that you make reference to the gun there. I think the weasels in what is it? Roger Rabbit, right? They were holding like real guns, and that was like a prop on set and stuff. There were some clever uses of that. It would have been cool to have seen those kind of tricks with live action animation, like that Roger Rabbit made reference to. But I guess that's just budget, I guess. So yeah, I mean, again, some nitpicks. I guess you can nitpick the story in some ways, right? Like, obviously Pete's going through this whole thing, and it's like, wait a minute, if you don't like the way you look, you've got a machine right there that'll make you look however you want, right? So it's like, there are some things where if you think about it, it's like, okay, but I mean, look, it's interesting. There wasn't a whole ton of that. The story actually made some sense, and you weren't necessarily distracted by certain elements of it because you were just having such a good and fun time watching it. That maybe on repeat viewings you maybe notice those things a little bit more, but for first time viewers, I think pretty well done.
Yeah. Now before we start talking about what this means for the parks, I'm gonna go through the panel. And we're gonna rate the movie.
Sure.
So out of 5 stars, I give the movie 4 out of 5. A very strong 4 out of 5. Mr. Family Man, what would your rating be out of 5?
I'd give it a 3, a solid 3.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Ethan, what would you give it out of 5?
I give it a 4 because even though I said those things, I still really like the movie. So.
Cool. And Mr. Vashkai?
Well, I will give it, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4 stars. Yeah, 4 stars. 4 stars out of 5. How about that? I thought it was actually pretty good. I thought it was actually well done. Could it have been better? Yeah, but for the resources that these filmmakers had, for the characters that they were able to integrate, which is not a small feat and task, how well written it actually was, the jokes, the gags, everything like that. I don't know. I think you got to give it to him 4 to 5 for sure.
Yeah, no, 100%. All right, so let's dive into a little
quick question though. Would you guys want a sequel?
Oh,
that's interesting.
Actually, believe it that you mentioned that. I wouldn't want to see a sequel to the movie. I would love to see then the reboot of the show, because at the very end of the movie, Chip and Dale were talking and they said, so we're actually seeing a reboot? And Chip goes, oh, I don't know. Maybe if the right script comes along, so it's kind of like giving like little hints. So I would love to see a reboot of the show, but in our mindset, maybe kind of have it both ways where we see the aspect of them filming, but maybe like do a behind the scenes sort of speak. So it's like you're showing the double life of Chip and Dale within the reboot of the show.
Interesting.
Pretty cool.
Interesting. Vash, what do you think? Would you be down for a sequel or a reboot?
Yeah, I mean, George's idea, rebooting the actual show, I think that'd be pretty cool. But I mean, this world, this universe, these characters, these stories, yeah, I'd totally be down for a reboot. Maybe even integrating other, Disney afternoon properties and having them, play a part in all these different crossovers and stuff like that. Hell yeah, I'd be very much interested in it.
Yeah,
Darkwing Duck.
Yeah, now that I would be totally down for a sequel, but it's risky because comedy sequels are very tough to pull off.
Very tough,
very hard. And this is part of the appeal, I think, with this is like the freshness of it. And if you kind of go into a sequel, kind of treading similar territory, it might not hit as well. 100%. They'd have to kind of almost reinvent itself again, I think, and come up with something really, really creative for a sequel. And the filmmakers, they did a great job with this one, so I don't doubt they can do that. But I think that would have to be the approach, because I think that if you do a sequel in the same vein as what we've seen with this one, it could get a little worn out. They got
100%.
Yeah. What do you think, Ethan? You want that sequel?
I think so. I think I do. That'd be super cool. And then if they can, incorporate even more animated characters, like bring Shrek in there, I would love it. Shrek and Chip and Dale and Donkey. Oh boy, that would be incredible.
Pretty funny.
That'd be great. That'd be great. All right, let's pivot now. Let's pivot to the parks. What does this movie mean for the parks? Because look, it's doing very well. It's getting great reviews. From what I understand, it was like #1 trending on Disney Plus. It's getting a lot of buzz. George, because we're getting that Toontown reimagining, and one of the attractions that's really going to be heavily reimagined is well, I don't know about heavily, but it's getting reimagined, is a Gadget's Go Coaster, which has connections obviously to the show. What do you think? What do you think the ramifications of this movie being a hit is going to be for Toontown? Do you think there's going to be any ramifications? Where do you stand?
I think even if it doesn't have like a complete overall change to have the style of the film, I think it's a good marketing critique between using the platforms of Disney Plus and the parks, because you're promoting something that has been around since the late 80s, early 90s, and you're kind of bringing that to the forefront. But also at the same time, in the park standpoint, you're taking Toontown, which was heavily involved with Mickey and Minnie and Roger Rabbit, and Chip and Dale are part of that world. And of course, with Gadget's Go Coaster. So it would definitely give a new light to refresh the land, where, again, it may not necessarily be the animation style of the film, but it'll bring a different aspect that the kids today can say, oh, I know who Gadget is now. She is from Rescue Rangers of Chip and Dale, because we watched it on Disney Plus. Because 9 out of 10 times, anyone who went into Toontown, and you say, let's go on Gadget's Go Coaster, a lot of the kids would say, well, who's Gadget? A lot of kids would say, oh, is that Inspector Gadget? Like they wouldn't even know who, they were talking about. So I think they'll use this as a platform that when Toontown does reopen, I think it will speak to a higher generation, where they may update the ride itself, but I think it's more so just to get the name out of saying who this character is and what franchise she belongs to. And I really do think, because they have like a Central Park type of feel to it, I have a feeling Chip and Dale is going to have a heavy presence in this update. I don't know why, but I think that it's going more beyond Disney Plus than just a reboot or a comeback of a film. But I think that they're going to utilize Chip and Dale heavily in Toontown itself.
Interesting. Now, Mr. Wizard, you mentioned, I think it was before the show, that you had no idea who Gadget was. You thought it was like a robot or something, or
I really thought it was a robot, because you just see a whole bunch of stuff being built on the coaster, and it would really help if Gadget was on the coaster somewhere. That would have been true. That means that's what you don't see her. So I just thought it was someone just building a whole bunch of things like a robot.
Well, yeah, and that plays to George's point, where Ethan, you're a young guy. You're in your 20s. And it plays to George's point. A lot of young people are not familiar with these characters at all. They have no idea who Gadget is. You didn't know who she was, and this movie might bring a little relevance to that attraction. Or maybe they even go a different route. Maybe it's no longer Gadgets. Maybe it's just a more of an overall Rescue Rangers coaster or something.
And that's what I hope.
That's what I hope as well. I think that would be a much better approach to it. It's kind of have an overall Rescue Rangers theme to it. Now, Vash, we did a video on this a couple weeks ago, but you care to reiterate your thoughts on what this means for Toontown?
I think this could have definite repercussions on Toontown. Obviously, it was Gadget's Go Coaster, as we've all kind of astutely pointed out. But the reason why it was Gadget's Go Coaster was because you had Chip and Dale's Treehouse and Chip and Dale's Ball Pit, right? Well, without those, now you have no Chip and Dale presence. So I think it makes logical sense that coaster be converted not just specifically towards Gadget, but a Chippendale Rescue Rangers or Chippendale type coaster just in general, right? So you can make use of the full cast of characters as part of the Chippendale verse, not just Gadget. And I think that would be a good thing. That coaster definitely needs some help in some areas, especially with some of the landscape and so forth. And I think they can incorporate either ideas from this movie or just the Chippendale kind of verse in general. But you know, now that we are kind of seeing the integration between toons and, you know, live action or you know, human figures and so forth, kind of reemerging again from the Roger Rabbit days, and now with Chippendale Rescue Rangers, I think I got to give it to you, OG. I think it's time now for an actual legitimate ink and paint club. Let's get it in Toontown.
Yeah.
You know, you've got that one courtyard, and I think the storage area beyond it for Jolly Trolley was back there, but you've got that one courtyard like to the side of Roger Rabbit that, hey, you could utilize that space and make an ink and paint a type experience out of that. I think very, very easily. You know, that would be really, really cool for Toontown. Not just where the kids go, but where the adults can go as well.
Oh, yeah, no, 100%. Themed bars at Disney are big business. There's no secret to that. And if you had an ink and paint club similar to what you saw in the movie, and you can even have, and I'm talking big budget here, Chapek would would be having a cow over what I would be proposing here. But like I would even have like an animatronic octopus behind the bar, like that you see in the movie, holding glasses or something, right? Standing behind the people that are serving you and stuff, bartenders. It would be an incredible atmosphere, and it would add a little bit, like you said, Vash, a little bit of like that adult flavor to the land. I think it's great. I think it's absolutely great.
And I think it would draw in a lot of aspects to, you know, just again, as you mentioned about theming, because there's a quick service restaurant down at Walt Disney World in Tomorrowland. It's called Cosmic Rays Starlight Cafe, and it gets a lot of traffic in there, not because of the food. It looks just like a kind of generic space type of quick service restaurant, but what gets a lot of attraction in there is the performance of Sunny Eclipse, where he's singing a lot of space songs and everything. So it could be one little aspect that can turn something so ordinary into something extraordinary.
Oh, totally. And in the movie, Eddie Valiant gets a scotch on the rocks, and there's literally rocks in his scotch. And it would be great to have, like, obviously they're not going to put real rocks in your drink, but they can have like maybe plastic rocks they put in there or something, you know, a scotch on the rocks. There's so many clever things you can do with the various cocktails and drinks in Toontown. It would just be such a gold mine. Disney, if anyone from Disney's watching this, do the Ink and Paint Club. You would make a mint.
That would be a
100%.
perfect opportunity to have Jessica Rabbit walking around. Oh, yes.
I'll give you 2 good reasons why I like that idea, Ethan.
Oh man, where is it? Where's my drop? Here we go.
Yes, folks, we only have high-class stuff on this show.
That's right. You know, look, listen. I mean, no, you could do some really cool things with projection technology, even, right? You know, the animation of various tunes, right? I think when Eddie Valiant walks in there initially, it's Daffy Duck and Donald, you know, having a kind of a what is it, a dueling pianos type kind of thing there. Obviously Daffy Duck, that would be a little bit of an issue, but at least Donald, you know, you can do some performances on there, just like George said with Sunny Eclipse, right? You can have a tune version of that. I mean, we're seeing gangbuster business over there at Star Wars Galaxy's Edge with Oga's Cantina, with a place that was newly invented that features a character very prominent in the theme park mythos, but not necessarily with the general audience, right? If you do an Ink and Paint Club where you're referencing a place that everybody's kind of seen and is familiar with through Roger Rabbit, I think that would do gangbusters business on its own. And they're creatively, when it comes to WDI and what they could do, I think that's ripe for opportunity in terms of theme and integration and so forth.
And I think we all can admit to this fact and agree upon it that Disneyland needs a lot more sit down type of restaurant style
Mhm.
areas. And I think that would be, even though that would be more like of a club type thing, but I mean, it could still draw in a lot of people to come in, have a beverage, enjoy the atmosphere, and it can help a lot with the traffic going in and out of Toontown, especially because they're going to get a lot of people going in for Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway.
Yeah.
There's four sit down restaurants in all of Disneyland. There's 4. That's it. I mean, out of a park with how many attractions, with how many people a year, and you're only going to be doing 4 sit down restaurants. Obviously, Disneyland is ripe for opportunity when it comes to more sit down locations, especially on the far end of the park like that. I think it could be a major win, George. To your point.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. There's a lot of potential here with this movie being a huge hit like it is. It could definitely impact.
And I don't think they're going to stop with Rescue Rangers. I think this is just the beginning. I think
so.
kind of like DuckTales kind of like started to pave that way, and then they did it really well with Rescue Rangers. And I'm hoping for a Darkwing Duck comeback, because I mean, out of everyone in the Disney afternoon, he was my all-time favorite.
Well, and I gotta give it to Disney. They're really, at least when it comes to the Disney afternoon, I feel like they've really done a good job so far respecting these characters. Because like I actually really enjoyed the DuckTales reboot from 2017. I thought that was a really good show. Some elements of that reboot were even better than the original. And a perfect example of that would be Webby. The Webby character in the reboot made much more sense, I think, than the Webby character in the 80s show. Webby's grown up with Huey, Dewey, and Louie. She's going to be a little rough around their edges. She's going to play because she's been playing with the guys, right? And that's reflective of her personality in the reboot. It's really not in the 80s show. And I love Webby as a character in the reboot way more than I ever did in the original. That's a very well done show. The Rescue Rangers movie, like we've talked about here for now an hour, is a phenomenal movie. It's a well done movie. So far, the 2 Disney afternoon things they've done out the gate have been really, really, really well done. And that's encouraging. Like you said, George, I would love to see Darkwing. I think they can do a lot with that stuff,
Yeah, and let's not forget here too. They've kind of done stuff with Disney Afternoon even recently with like 90s Night and stuff like that. I think doing that over again, maybe integrating some of these new concepts into there, as kind of a backhand reference to those kind of things, I think could be really, really fun. This definitely has some creative opportunity attached to it. And man, wouldn't WDI would love to play with some of the characters that Rescue Rangers plays around with. That I think that would be really, really cool if they can get the rights in those kind of spaces. But I think they could. I think these companies and corporations are like, oh, theme park rights, yeah, sure, whatever. I mean, we're not doing much with them now. You might as well make use out of them. I think you could do a lot of fun stuff.
I have to say though, I am the Disney family man, but I'm telling you right now, they bring back 90s Night at Disneyland, I would be gladly to sell Josh to the Gypsies to get a ticket to go to that.
Oh, man.
That's funny. That's funny. Now, one show that I would love to see them kind of take another stab at would be Gargoyles.
Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah. I mean, Gargoyles was huge. We don't really necessarily associate it with the Disney afternoon like the other, famous franchises from that era, but Gargoyles was a big, big deal. That was the stab at what is it, the Batman the Animated Series, right? Yes. Mm-hmm. And it was actually pretty good. It was actually done really, really well.
It was. That would be an interesting concept to kind of dabble in. Have you seen Gargoyles, Ethan?
I haven't, but I like that. Was it I feel like it gives off a horror vibe. A little bit, like a tiny, and I like that. So I'm really interested in that, especially because then you can put it in Oogie Boogie Bash. That'd be great. Great stuff.
No, that would be cool. Gargoyles has a ton of potential. And you're right. It does kind of have a little bit of a horror vibe, detective drama vibe. It definitely does have a Dark Knight kind of energy to it. Mm-hmm. You can tell that was the response to Batman. Totally. So great show. Great show. I'd love to see them bring that back. Absolutely.
Oh yeah, 100%. And they already kind of merchandising it, because I think I was just at Best Buy or something, and I was in their kind of toy section there with some collectibles and pop culture, items and knickknacks and so forth. And I saw some gargoyle stuff there. I was like, what is this doing here? That's kind of interesting. So
Wow.
I think, maybe, even somebody in consumer products is looking that way. How about somebody from the parks look that way, or from the studio side look that way? I think that'd be really, really cool.
Yeah, 100%. Well, guys, I want to thank you so much today for, joining me in talking about Rescue Rangers, the Disney afternoon. We got into Toontown. Really, really, really good conversation. And, we have a lot of great content coming out, you guys. I mean, this whole thing with Mayor Harry Sadu.
Oh boy.
Is Drama City. So when more information comes out on that, we're definitely gonna do videos on that, and that's gonna be very juicy. Very, very juicy.
Oh yeah,
Fresh double squeezed. Double squeezed.
And if they need help, then they just call Chip and Dale.
Yeah.
So there's a lot in the pipeline. There's a lot to discuss in the Disney world right now. But we're going to go ahead and close it out. I'm going to start with Mr. Family Man. Thank you, Mr. Family Man, for joining us again today. If you could let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. Thanks again for having me on. This was an awesome conversation. As always, talking with you fellas, some Disney news. But of course, you could always find me on my YouTube channel, Disney Family Man 23. You can interact with me on Twitter at Disney George. And of course, you'll find me here on Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner.
Perfect. And down below, Ethan, Mr. Theme Park Wizard. It was great to have you back on, Ethan. If you can let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media, sir.
It was great to be back on, and the hour flew by. But you can find me on Theme Park Wizard on YouTube, Theme_Wizard on Twitter, Theme Store Wizard to buy some cool stuff, and what's the other one? Theme_Park_Wizard on Instagram. And if you have a Facebook, Theme Park Wizard.
Yes.
Oh yeah, I got my own banner.
And Mr. Vash Sky, producer Dre, host of Freshly Squeezed. Thank you again for coming on, sir, as always. If you can let everybody at home know where they can find you on social media.
Hey, best place to interact with me is going to be on Twitter. It's right down there at VashGuy, just like it's spelled on your screen right there. And if you want to see me, well, it's going to be on the channel you're watching right now at Orange Grove 55 at Freshly Squeezed, your source for juicy news and info squeezed fresh right from the Grove. And yes, we will definitely have some juicy news and info on all things Anaheim. I don't know, politics, I guess. It's not great, but it might have implications for the happiest place on earth. So we'll just have to tune in and find out what those implications might actually be.
Yeah. It's stressful. It's stressful. You're right. It can go and it can go south really fast. So
Disney
100%.
politics just can't catch a break on either coast.
Well, apparently, if it goes south, they're already hitting Florida, so that's about as south as you can get.
Yeah. Yes. Well, thank you all for watching today, and comment down below with your feelings on Rescue Rangers, the movie, what you loved about it, what you didn't like about it. Comment down below about what you think about Toontown and maybe the Rescue Rangers influence that might occur, might not. We would love to hear from you. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Sector 2. Malfunction in Sector 2. All droids will be shut down for reloading of labor programs. Stand by for power disconnect.